Is Ahmad Elsi your brother?
For the markup?
Yeah. Is he your
We're in
brother?
the middle of a legislative briefing.
Is he your brother? I'm here today because I've been following the Ilhan Omar saga for about a week now. Just last Thursday, I was here in Congress chatting with Omar about her position on what AOC says are concentration camps on the U.S.'s southern border. That video was seen by almost 1 million people because, as you could expect, Ilhan Omar, being the anti-Semite that she is, she totally thinks that what's happening here in the United States is equivalent to what happened in the Holocaust in Nazi Germany in Auschwitz.
There are camps and people are being concentrated. This is very simple. I don't even know why this is a controversial thing for her to say.
Now, I'm here today because the story has changed from that to something else. The mainstream media has picked up a story that has been circling through conservative media circles for quite some time now, a couple of years actually. It's pathetic that the mainstream media has just picked it up now. But what has happened is there's a bunch of allegations that Ilhan Omar married her brother and was playing some sick game of musical chairs with her brother and her real husband, and then was filing joint tax returns with her husband, the second husband, even though she wasn't really married to him at the time. On top of that, it looks like she perjured herself in court when she told the courthouse, after she tried to get a divorce from who people are saying are her brother. She said that she hadn't seen him in years, since 2011, in fact, when really she had been talking with him on and off on Instagram, referring to him as her children's uncle, which leads me to believe that, yeah, he is in fact her brother. There are tons of questions that Ilhan Omar needs to answer. She's avoiding the media. The mainstream media doesn't have the kahunas to actually ask her these questions. So I'm here in Washington, D.C. She has a press conference, and I'm going to ask her some questions. Let's see what she says. Ilhan, if I could get a moment of your time, could you tell me why you filed illegal tax returns in 2014 and 2015?
And it's which committee?
Can you tell me definitively or not, is Ahmad Elsi your brother?
For the markup?
Yeah.
Is he your
We're in
brother?
the middle of a legislative briefing.
Is he your brother?
We're going to which one?
It's Foreign Affairs. I'll go with you. Can you tell me definitively, yes or no, is he your brother? And why can't you answer that question?
The remarks you gave me earlier.
Why did you refer to him as your child's uncle on Instagram? And why did you lie on court documents saying that you hadn't seen him since 2011, when in fact you'd been talking to him all the time on Instagram?
Sir, we're not doing ambush interviews.
This isn't an ambush.
You can send me an email.
Why are you so afraid to answer these questions?
Thank you. So we have budget and extract.
How can anyone take you credibly on the student loan tax file when you were cheating on your taxes in 2014? And how can you call for Donald Trump's tax filings when nobody can trust you on the file at all? And why are you scared to answer the questions?
Excuse me.
What are you hiding?
Trying to find my phone at the moment.
So that you can go on Instagram and talk to your brother? Now, I don't know why Ilhan Omar is so afraid to answer very simple questions. If I asked you, did you marry your sibling? You know what the answer to that is? No, at least it should be. I don't know why she's not answering these questions. I don't know why she's so scared. It certainly makes her look guilty on a bunch of different counts. Thank you so much for following this story. If you want to pitch in to my coverage, please go to rebelinvestigates.com. There you can pitch in a few bucks to help cover the cost of my flights and the Ubers that it takes.
Of the state of California, talking about how she used to prosecute the parents of kids who were truant. Here's what she said. She said, "I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy." Well, that was a little controversial in San Francisco, and you can actually see her laughing in the tape. She says, "Frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned at the time. We didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue. I've got a little capital. I'm going to spend some of it." And this is what we did. We recognized, as a prosecutor in law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school system has a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. Well, the internet was going nuts over this last night because the suggestion is that Kamala Harris was going after parents of kids who are truant. And really what you require is a social worker in these cases. You don't require a police officer. Now, it's kind of fascinating to watch as the left resonates to Kamala Harris despite her record in this particular area. It is also important to note that when she says something should be tantamount to a crime, you as Attorney General do not get to decide what is and is not a crime. You do not get to decide that everything you don't like is now enforceable by the police. If you do, that makes you a centralized government control tyrant, and Kamala Harris does have those tendencies. But all of that is being pushed to the side by the fact that Kamala Harris is an intersectional candidate. She's female and she's black. And that means that she must be a great, great candidate, even if she's spouting the same nonsense that all the other Democratic candidates are spouting ad nauseum. So last night she did a town hall on CNN, and it was just a wonderful example of CNN, again, playing host to a propaganda piece on behalf of a Democrat. So she's in front of a group of people, probably, 400, 500 people maybe. And I love that CNN was like, she did this in Des Moines, Iowa. And CNN was touting this online. Like, wow, look at the crowd Kamala Harris can draw. Not to be self-centered here for a second. I have not spoken to a crowd smaller than 500 people in probably 3 years. Okay, and I'm not a senator from California. So it's pretty amazing that people are now touting this as an example of her ability to get people out there. I mean, CNN's broadcasting this thing live. You think CNN is going to be interested in hosting an event that has a bunch of empty seats in the background? In any case, she was asked a bunch of questions about policy, and she proved just how radical she is. So she was specifically asked about private health care insurance. So she is a proponent of Medicare for all, the Bernie Sanders plan that would cost $32 trillion over 10 years. It would double the size of the federal government, and it would also destroy the private sector. Now, there are a lot of folks who say, well, Medicare for all wouldn't destroy the private sector because health insurance would still continue to exist in the private sector. But according to Kamala Harris, she actually wants it to destroy private sector medical insurance. She believes that everybody should be thrown onto government care, that you shouldn't be able to buy private sector health insurance. Because once the taxpayer is footing the bill for Medicare, number one, there's not going to be a ton of money left over to pay for private health care insurance. Two, most people are going to be getting their health care insurance through the government of the United States. And three, if you have private health insurers competing with the federal government, that's not good for the federal government because the federal government is then going to have its care rejected. This is the great hole in a lot of these systems. You can have supplemental health insurance in a lot of nationalized healthcare countries. For example, in Canada, you can get supplemental health insurance, although it took a while for them to allow even that. In Israel now, you can finally get supplemental health insurance. In Australia, most people have private supplemental health care insurance. Medicare for all in Australia is really just for basic care. But for full proponents of Medicare for all, people who believe that the government should cover all costs, it's going to come down to rationing. And it's going to come down to banning private health care insurance. Because remember, let's say that there's a private health care insurer, Blue Cross Blue Shield or something, and that private health care insurer can offer doctors a better reimbursement rate than Medicare. Well, who do you think the doctors are going to look to in order to get patients? Are they going to look to Medicare or are they going to look to the private healthcare insurers? That's why many countries have outright banned private healthcare insurance. They don't want to compete with the private sector. They want to crowd the private sector out. So Kamala Harris was asked specifically about this, and she came down full scale on the side of nationalization of the healthcare system and full scale destruction of private health insurance. Here is Kamala Harris doing just that.
I believe the solution, and I'm actually feel very strongly about this, is that we need to have Medicare for all. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
So in other words, 95% of people in the United States have health care from their insurance company via their employer. If you like your doctor, you will not be able to keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you will not be able to keep your plan. She wants to take all of those things directly from you. I mean, this is a massive segment of the United States economy. If you think that you're going to remove legitimately like $1 trillion from American industry with no questions asked, and that people are going to be supremely happy when you take away their health plan, then think again. And the thing about Obamacare, Obamacare is a piece of crap legislation, but the thing about Obamacare is that Obamacare was purportedly about trying to help people in the individual market. If you had your health insurance program through your employer, Obamacare theoretically did not touch it. Now, that's not true. Obamacare did regulate the insurance companies and make it nearly impossible for you to get the same level of care at the same cost as you did before. It raised healthcare costs across the board. But it was specifically driven by the needs in the individual market, people who had lost their jobs and had a health problem and now couldn't get health insurance. But it was not directed at destroying the entire system. Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, these are folks who want to destroy the entire system from the very center of the system. They want your plan to be gone. They want your doctor to be gone. There's an amazing statement by Kamala Harris to just come out and say that part. She said the quiet part out loud. Now, everybody knows that that is where this is going, but everybody is pretending that that is not where this is going right now. Right, here's what Kamala Harris actually said. She said she felt very strongly about Medicare for all. And then when she was pressed by Jake Tapper, if that means eliminating private insurance, she said yes. She said yes. She said the idea is everyone gets access to medical care. Okay, and then she said, let's just get rid of it. She said, let's just be done with it. Well, I'm glad that she can summarily dismiss 25% of the American economy right off the top. And by the way, the part of the economy that also happens to generate all of the medical innovation, that also happens to generate all of the profit incentive for doctors to go into the industry in the first place. Democrats are incredibly extreme on this stuff. All Trump should do for the next 2 years if Kamala Harris is indeed the Democratic nominee is play the clip of her over and over and over again saying she's going to take away her health care program. She's going to take away her health insurance. And let's see how the elderly feel about that. Let's see how you feel about that when she says she's taking away health insurance for your child so that you can work with a government bureaucrat. I also love the suggestion by Kamala Harris there that the solution to all of your paperwork ills is the federal government. Since when has that ever been true? Has there been any area of American life in which your life has been made simpler by the federal government? Like less paperwork? I highly doubt it. But that wasn't her only extreme statement of the night. She was also asked specifically about guns. And she said that we should basically ban all semi-automatic weapons in the United States.
There is no reason in a civil society that we have assault weapons around communities that can kill babies and police officers. There is no reason why we cannot have reasonable gun safety laws in this country. And guess what, guys? Here's the reality of it also. We're not waiting for a good idea. We have the good ideas, an assault weapons ban, background checks.
Okay, so, she then went on and she specifically said, you know what we should do? We should force legislators to look at autopsy photos because, and this is the ugliest part of American politics right now, the idea that if you disagree with Kamala Harris about her gun proposals, it's because you just don't care about the children. If only you cared about the children, then you would agree with her that all semi-automatic weapons in the United States, when she says assault rifles, she means semi-automatic weapons, that all semi-automatic weapons in the United States ought to be banned or confiscated outright. You were talking about hundreds of millions of weapons in the United States. And she suggests that if I oppose her stupid policy, then that's because I don't care about dead kids. Here she is doing this routine.
20 6- and 7-year-old babies were massacred in Connecticut. They failed to act. Here's what I think. I think that somebody should have required, and this is going to sound very harsh, I think somebody should have required all those members of Congress to go in a room, in a locked room, no press, no one, nobody else, and look at the autopsy photographs of those babies. And then you vote your conscience.
Okay, so we're going to force them to look at the pictures Kamala Harris wants them to look at in order to get them to change their mind. Okay, fine. If she wants that to be the case, then how about this? How about every Democrat in the United States Congress has to look at a picture of an aborted baby at 22 weeks, and then they can vote their conscience on free choice. Then they can vote their conscience on whether it's okay to slaughter babies in the womb. But people on the left would say, well, that's an emotional appeal. That's not a logical appeal. Well, that's exactly what Kamala Harris is doing there with regard to slaughtered kids in classrooms. The suggestion that I'm supposed to give up my rifle because something bad happened to kids not perpetrated by me and by somebody I would have attempted to stop if I had been there with my gun. Okay, we'll get to more of the extremism of Kamala Harris in just a second. First, let's talk about life insurance. So, I know it's uncomfortable to talk about the fact that we're all going to plot at some point, but because we know that, we also know that we need life insurance. It's just part of being an adult. But, sometimes it's complicated. You do it by word of mouth. You don't know exactly how to go about doing it. This is why you need Policy Genius. Policy